that time of year. Love is in the air. So let me share everything that you're going to need to make an online dating ESL lesson. Oh, I love this one. Hi, my name is Megan. I have been an ESL teacher in China for the past 10 years. I'm also getting my PhD in education, and I want to make videos to share tips and ideas and talk about all things teaching. So let me share with you my entire ESL lesson plan for online dating. I'm not one to gatekeep, but if I were, I would want to gatekeep this lesson because I think it is so fun, so creative. My students always love it whenever we do it. So let's just jump in. Let me give you the full lesson plan and you can customize this according to your student's level or age or whatever you need. First, we've got to start with a warm-up. We want students using English from the moment the bell rings. So let's go on Tinder. For this warm-up, I call it swipe left or right. For the students who aren't aware, I let them know that swiping left on Tinder, on a dating app, means that you don't like the person that you see, and swiping right means that you do like the person you see and you would be open to talking to them. Then I've just gone online and I've screenshotted different random Tinder profiles. Of course, I make sure that they're age appropriate, and I also look for language appropriate ones as well that I know students can read and understand. I put it up on the screen and I have students choose whether or not they're going to swipe left or swipe right on that person. This is such a fun, snappy warm-up exercise. Usually the students just look at the picture and decide left or right, and I have them all call it out as a class. But then for some of them, we do look at them a little bit closer and we find out, what is their job or what do they say about themselves. It's a great place to learn a couple of vocabulary words in a native setting as well. Honestly, this warm-up could last 30 seconds or 5 minutes. It's completely up to you. Now, what's the focus of our entire lesson? Throughout this online dating lesson, we're really focusing on adjectives and descriptions, describing a person or describing how you feel about a person as well. If you're looking for another game or activity to add in, you can always play the circle football game. I have a whole video about it that I can link in the cards. Basically, students will just use adjectives throughout the entirety of the game to describe the people and the things that they see around them in the classroom. After the students have warmed up, I like to move into the vocabulary words that we need to learn in order to complete the future activities, and then also move into any exercises that you might have in your textbook or in your school's curriculum. Now for here, this is going to vary greatly depending on the type of class that you're teaching or depending on which textbook you have. Here you can customize it according to whatever your students need, whatever your student's level is going to be. Some vocabulary words I often use for a topic like this, something like blind date, or we'll talk about the word partner because most students know what that word means in relation to their classroom setting, like talk to your partner for 5 minutes. But not a lot of textbooks talk about the fact that we use partner to talk about a romantic relationship. I often make sure students know words like occupation, job, hobby, because we'll be talking about that when we talk about, online dating, finding a dream, a partner. You could always add in a bunch of adjectives as well to describe a person's personality or describe their appearance. We'll definitely be using those. Now let me give you a couple of speaking exercises you could do. If you have a really long class time, my class periods are 90 minutes long. I can do all of these within this class period, but if you have a shorter lesson, you can pick and choose what you want to do. One great thing to do is to have a debate and have students talk about the pros and cons of online dating versus meeting someone in real life. You can ask them, would you prefer to meet someone online or in real life? And what are the pros and cons of both of them? At the beginning, students are sometimes a little bit hesitant to jump into this conversation because they're not quite sure what to say, especially if they're a little bit younger. They might not have actual experience with dating. Even though my students are university students, most of them have not had a boyfriend or a girlfriend before, so a lot of them don't have first-hand experience. So just give the students a little bit of time to kind of get warmed up. You can also give them some ideas if they need it, but usually students are pretty quickly able to come up with ideas as long as you give them a second. Usually they'll start with things like safety. The idea that maybe you'll meet somebody online and they might not be who they say they are, or maybe it's not safe to meet up with someone that you don't really know in real life. And this is a great conversation starter because they can talk about objective facts about safety, but they can also talk about their personal preferences as well. They might say that it feels a little bit more awkward to meet up with someone online versus seeing someone in person, but then they might also talk about the fact that if you meet someone in person, maybe that person is in your circle, and if things don't go well, if they don't work out, maybe that affects your friend group, or maybe that affects your classroom experience, etc. Remember how at the beginning of class we went on Tinder? Now students are going to build their own dating profile, and this is always so much fun. So what you'll do is you'll divide the class up into different groups. I usually like to do 2 people together, and I tell them that they have to build a dating profile for an imaginary person. They should include things like the person's name, their age, where they live, what their job is. Because my students are students, they often find it more interesting to also talk about what school they go to or what their major is. You can also include things like hobbies, and it's really fun to tell the students that they have to draw a picture of the person. Even if they're not a good artist, just draw a picture of it. You'll be surprised at what you'll get. And then for higher level students, I usually also ask them to write 1 or 2 sentences as the bio. That way we can get a little bit of the personality of this person. You know, if your person were trying to get attention on a dating app, what would they write to get people to click on them, to get people to swipe right? Now, if you want to take this up a notch, and this is so fun, you can have red flags and green flags. First, you have to teach the students what this means. What is a red flag? What is a green flag? I usually go back to the dating profiles and I will pull up one that we used in our warm-up, and we'll go through and look for red flags and look for green flags. The students always love this. They're really fascinated by the idea of red flags and green flags. So a red flag is just any warning sign, and a green flag is a good thing that's listed on the profile. So one of the Tinder profiles that I used in the warm-up talked about how much he loves his dog, that his dog is his life. Every Saturday morning he takes his dog to the dog park and they just have a great time together. And I asked the students, do you like dogs? Do you love dogs? And when some of them say yes, I say, okay, so this is a green flag. You love dogs, he loves dogs. Sounds good. For the students who say, I don't care about dogs, I say, okay, well, maybe that's a red flag. You don't care about dogs and he cares about dogs. Okay, so we've explained red flags and green flags. What are we doing with this? Now, we give each group or each pairing a card. Some of the cards are red, some of the cards are green. You can probably see where I'm going with this. If your group gets a red card, then you have to make a Tinder profile for somebody who has a ton of red flags. If you get a green card, then you make a profile with someone who has a bunch of green flags. So if you got a green card, I mean, where did they go to school? They went to Harvard. What job do they have? I don't know, they're CEO of a company, or they're a K-pop idol. If you've got a red card, then maybe, you know, the person dropped out of school in middle school, never went to college, maybe they're unemployed, or maybe they have a job that they just don't think is enjoyable. Do you remember playing MASH when you were a kid? This is essentially what it is. And this is also a really fun time if you want to add in culture as well. After they've talked about this, you could talk a little bit about the culture. In America, I feel like most people would say a doctor is a green flag. They make a lot of money, they're well respected. But in China, a lot of my students have put that as a red flag because generally in China, doctors are not as respected as they are in the States, and they don't earn as much money as they do in the States as well. So after this activity, you might even be able to talk a little bit about the cultural differences between what is considered a good major or a good occupation in your home country versus the country that you're teaching in. Okay, so students have made their dating profiles either for a red flag or for a green flag. Now, if you don't have cards, you know, one time I forgot and I just divided the class into half, like this side of the room, red cards, this side of the room, green cards. This doesn't work as well because students really like the luck of the draw, having a card, but it also doesn't work as well because next you want the students to share their ideas with another group. So after students have finished their profile, have them turn to another group, another pair, and describe their person to them. That way they get to practice their speaking again, and it's just really fun to see what other people have come up with. Other students are able to learn new vocabulary words. Maybe they didn't know the word janitor before, and now they've learned that from their classmate. And if everyone on this side of the room has red and everyone on this side has green, it's just not as interesting because they're like, oh yeah, this is my person, they're good. And they're like, yeah, this is my person, they're good. Usually students enjoy it a little bit more when there's a little bit more of variety. One team has a green flag, the other team has a red flag. So after students have practiced speaking, talking with each other to make the dating profile, now they get to explain it to someone else in their class. The last activity I want to share is you've been catfished. So for this one, I set up the scene and then I allow students to finish out the conversation. This is a role play conversation dialogue activity. And just like the red flag, green flag activity, we're gonna have fun with this. So I tell the students that you have been talking to this guy online for the last couple of weeks. You can make it whatever gender you want. For sake of example, it's a guy. You've been talking to this guy online for a couple of weeks. He seems really nice. He seems really considerate. You ask him about his job and his lifestyle. He says that he's a successful businessman. He always posts pictures of himself wearing, a Rolex, and he drives a Ferrari. And so it's finally your time to meet him. You go to a very nice restaurant and surprise, surprise, he walks in and he looks nothing like what you had seen online. He doesn't wear a Rolex. He doesn't drive a Ferrari. You find out he is not a successful businessman. He is, insert another job here. Instead of being 6'4", really tall, really handsome, really built, he looks like this. And here's where I allow students to start to get a little bit creative. So I give them this framework. He said he was a successful businessman. He said he had a Rolex. He said he drove a Ferrari. He said he was like really tall, dark, handsome, whatever the beauty standard is of the country that you're teaching. Then let students take it from there. Have one student be the catfished person and have one person be the catfisher. How does this conversation play out? I find this works really well if you give students that background, that framework, and then let them finish the story rather than just saying, you've been catfished, make a conversation. Give all of the students the same situation, the same scenario, and then let their creativity carry out the rest of the conversation. If you want, you could always choose a couple of students to come to the front of the room and present their conversation for everyone else as well. And so that is my online dating ESL lesson. This is always such a fun one. The students really love how fun and creative and lighthearted it is, and they also really like that they have so much control over the vocabulary that they discover and how they communicate and how they express themselves. Remember, the point of this is to have students describing and expressing different jobs, different appearances, different hobbies. If you're looking for homework ideas, you could always have students write out a picture of their dream partner. What do they look like? What's their occupation? What's their job? What is their personality? What are their hobbies like? For a little bit more of a challenge, you could also have students create a texting conversation between two people on a dating app. So one person will ask a question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, and they have a chance to simulate a real, hopefully native conversation. Now, if you're looking for other lessons to continue this idea of using adjectives, describing things, I have an entire lesson plan based on a storytelling ESL activity. I can link that in the cards and down below as well. That one's always so much fun. You could use that in the next lesson to continue this theme of describing things. But if you're looking for other topics on things like food or fashion or money or whatever, there are plenty of other lesson planning topics topics on the channel as well that you can check out. And if you're looking for a handout for that Tinder profile that we talked about, I'll have that linked down below as well. Then you can just print out the handout and have students draw in the picture, write in the occupation, write in the bio, and all of those things. If you have any questions, you can always leave them down in the comments below. I hope you get to try this with your class. I hope they enjoy it as much as my students usually do. You can always check back here for weekly videos. You can also check out the website atlasteachingesl.com for more tips, more ideas as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great online dating lesson, and I will see you next time.